This is probably the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my entire life. So if I don't do well, please clap for me anyways. So I am Sabah Khodir, and I have a platform called Unquote. Unquote is an artistic platform where I feature up-and-coming Arab artists. Usually, when people ask me about Unquote, they say, Sabah, how did you become a writer? Or Sabah, how did you become such a good writer? Which is a very good question. It's a good question because I don't have an answer for it. And I'm usually the person with the answers. See, people usually come to me when they want answers for something, when they want to talk about something, when they want to feel better about something. So if I don't know an answer, it means it's a good question. Usually, while growing up, I was considered a very sensitive child. I think if you follow me, you can see I'm filled with a lot of emotions. That's why standing on a stage right now may mean more to me than it does to a lot of people, because I understand what this means. I pay attention to everything. When a person feels something, I feel it too. When a person is scared, I'm scared. The only difference is that my feelings sometimes get me sick. While growing up, I had trouble with my emotions. I dealt with them differently than most people. Some people reacted to things, I reacted to things in a different way. For example, something as easy as taking the shower. Like, you take a shower, right? And it's very normal. You're in the shower and you're washing your hair and everything is fine. You're listening to music and you feel okay. And then accidentally, that happens to everyone, I think, you get soap in your eyes. The reaction to getting soap in your eyes is usually very ordinary. You wash your eyes, it stings a bit, but you move on with your life. I didn't react like that when I would get soap in my eyes. See, when I would get soap in my eyes, the first thing that would react was my body. I would start to scream very loudly, and I would start to call for my mom. I'd ask for help, and I'm screaming bloody murder at this point. I'm jumping out of the bathtub. I'm clawing my way up to the bathroom. I'm screaming. My eyes are burning. And then the thought process begins. I start to think how the soap is going to dissect its way into my cerebral cortex. Suddenly, the soap is definitely going to burn the cornea of my eyes. I am convinced at this point that I'm going blind. And I live that moment. The minute I start to think I'm going blind and I start to convince myself that I'm going blind, I start to live the reality of a blind person. So now suddenly I'm not just going blind, but I'm trying to plan out my life as a blind person. How am I going to get to school in the morning? How will I make friends? How am I going to go from my room to the bathroom? I was scared and crying and screaming. At this point, I'm shaking so much, and I start to vomit. And I'm vomiting, and my mom rushes in. She grabs me, she holds me, and she says, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I got soap in my eyes." She says, "That's okay. They're not going to make this product to blind you if you accidentally get into it in your eyes." But I said, no. A lot of it got into my eyes. I'm sure of what's going to happen. I'm definitely going blind. She says, "Open your eyes." So I opened my eyes, and I realized I haven't gone blind, surprisingly. But I've also decided that I'm never taking a shower again. And if you think if that was just a minute, it wasn't. I really had trouble taking a shower. I was a growing adult, and my mom had to drag me into the shower to the point that sometimes I wouldn't use soap, just to be very careful that I don't get soap in my eyes once again. That's just a small example of how I would handle something as simple as getting soap in my eyes. Eventually, these problems didn't stop. I was still vomiting every time I was getting upset. When I would cry, I cried as if the world was ending. because it would feel that way. And I would realize that I never, ever had middle ground emotion. I didn't surrender to that. When I was happy, I was euphoric. I was in cloud 9. I was on heaven. But when I was sad, I was grieving. I was buried. But when I was in love, I was in love. If you can imagine how I was when I'm happy or I'm sad, you can imagine what I was like when I was in love. And people like my kind of love when they can read about it, when they see it on a novel, when they watch it in a movie, and they say, I want someone to love me like that. But when it happens in real life and you see someone love the way that I love, that I build a universe for a person, that the world will crumble without them, immediately it's like, Sabah, this is too much. You're too intense. Suck back in. So I would write. Writing saved my life almost all the time. I had so much opinions and I didn't have an outlet. So I would write all the time. And I would write and I would write and I would write. And people loved to read what I would write. And I became Sabah, the writer, the girl that says things that not everyone is saying. But still, it was hard to listen to me in person because I was always sick and I was going to all the doctors. And every doctor that I've been to a bone doctor, I've been to a nerves doctor, I've been to a doctor for my heart on countless occasions because I was pretty sure I was having a heart attack more than once. I went to all the doctors you can imagine here in Egypt, and every single doctor told me the same thing. Sabah, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. How is that possible? My stomach hurts all the time. How is it possible? I get nosebleeds. I get headaches. There's nothing wrong with you. So I developed the nickname of Mittala. Oh, too sensitive. صباح متدلعة. يعني عندها she's very sensitive يعني بتحس كتير وكده. So I believed it a little bit. I was like, okay, maybe I'm just really sensitive. But then I was 21 and I was on my bed and I sneezed. It's very simple. I just sneezed. And then suddenly I couldn't move from my waist down. I couldn't move at all. My legs weren't moving. I couldn't stand up. I did what I always do. And I screamed for my mom. And she ran to the room and she said, what's wrong? And I said, I'm paralyzed. I can't move. She's like, what do you mean you can't move? I told her, I can't move. Did you move? What happened? I just can't move. At this point, we go to the hospital. We go to a bone specialist. He takes x-rays, he takes MRIs, he does everything. He looks at my results and I was waiting. I was waiting to hear that I'm never going to be able to walk again. And then he says, Sabah, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. At this point, I'm very frustrated. What do you mean there's nothing wrong with me? There's everything wrong with me. I can't move. He says, what you're experiencing is muscle spasms in the bottom back. And your muscle spasms are very intense, and there are multiple muscle spasms, and they come from extreme stress. So he says, what is a girl like you, 21, young, your life is just starting, what do you have to stress about? First of all, as a young girl, I have everything to stress about because my hormones are all over the place and I'm trying to make decisions in life. Second of all, I'm a young girl who thinks about everything. So when he says, what do you have to worry about? I think of everything. Things that don't even directly affect me. I think about plague, genocide, war. I think about poverty and unstable agriculture. I think about all the people in the world that are being forced to do things that they don't want to do. But I don't say that because people don't want to have these conversations with me anymore, and it's very difficult to sit with someone who always has these things in mind. So I don't say it. My mom, she had enough. She says, بصي يا دكتور, مشكلة صباح إن هي, she does not stop watching the news. I can't get her to stop watching the news. But the doctor says something to me that blew my mind. He gave me the greatest epiphany of my life. He says, "Oh, simple. Just stop watching the news." And it hit me. It really hit me that this is how we handle all of our problems in the Middle East. We don't address them. We don't talk about them. Be ignorant. That's better. That makes more sense. What are you bothering yourself over? Just don't pay attention to these things that bother you. If you don't like rape, you don't like sexual harassment, don't dress provocatively, because that's the answer. If you don't like domestic violence, don't watch YouTube videos. If you don't want to catch a cold, don't sleep under the air condition. I'm sure every doctor has told you that the air condition has given you a cold. It's never been about the air condition. It's about the virus. If you can't address the virus, you can't fix your problem. So this doctor, who has a pamphlet in his hand, and he gets to prescribe medicine, and people come to him vulnerable and needing somebody, told me that being an ignorant, cute little girl is what I have to be, because what are you even worried about? You're 21. My problems were not solved, but I did try to listen to him. I tried to stop being scared. I tried to stop thinking, and I'm trying to stop with the emotions, and I tried everything, but it didn't work. I was still always sick. Before I had a new job meeting, I would be sick. Before I would have a stressful moment in my life, I would get sick. I was always sick. So the one good question remained, what's wrong with me? Doctors couldn't figure it out. And I was convinced I had a disease that no one knew about that just attacks me. So, 25 years old, I go into a doctor's office and I'm finally diagnosed. I'm diagnosed with severe anxiety and panic disorder. And the doctor says to me, "How were you living for 25 years without knowing that you had severe anxiety and panic disorders?" He says, "What did you think was happening when your heart was beating so fast? What did you think was happening when you were vomiting so much? What did you think?" I told him I thought I had a disease. I had gone to all of these doctors in the past 25 years here in Egypt, and not a single one of them paid attention or thought about my mental health. Not a single one of them told me, "We can't figure out what's going on inside your body physically, so this must be a mental health problem." Nobody thought about that. I had panic attacks. That was what I thought was killing me. If you have ever had a panic attack, you know that a panic attack feels like death over and over and over again. So the doctor says, "Okay, you have two choices. One, you're going to stay on medication for the rest of your life because this is a disorder and you're not going to get rid of it. Or two, you're going to try as much as possible to live with this problem without medication." I was scared of taking medication, of course. I'm in Egypt, and that has been stigmatized for me. So I decided I'm going to try medication. And I took medication. And it was horrible. The first 2 weeks of medication were the worst 2 weeks of my life. And that's it. I hated being me. I did not want to be me anymore. Being me hurt. And every single person who ever looked up to me and read my work and asked me for advice could no longer look up to me or read my work and ask me for advice because I couldn't offer anything. I hated myself. So I went to the doctor's office and I was this close, and I wanted to give up. And I sat with him and I read a poster, and it said, "Where hope is planted, miracles grow." And it was very, very, very small, and it was just one line, and it really changed my life. I went back home after finally being able to face my diagnosis, and I spoke to my family and my friends, and I asked them, "What do you think I should do?" And I was given 3 responses. 1, don't tell your friends, because people are going to think you're crazy. 2, don't tell anyone at work, because they're going to think you're too unstable to handle your job. And 3, which was my favorite, don't tell any boys, because no one's going to want to marry you. And the thing is that even though it's kind of funny, it's a little true. The fact that we don't have a logical or concrete understanding on mental health issues makes you believe that anyone with a mental health problem is crazy. But statistically, everyone has a mental health issue. Everyone. Everyone you look up to, everyone you believe, everyone you think is the greatest person on earth, everyone that you think is the weirdest person on earth, everyone has faced a mental health issue. But if you can't come to terms with talking about it, people are going to hide it. So I tried, and I sat with myself in my room, and for the first time I was really nice to myself. And I told myself, you're not going to be ashamed of what you have, because what you have survived. And what you have was put on top of you. And it wasn't your choice. You didn't do this to yourself, but you survived it. And if you ever feel like you're too much, then you're just going to have to find someone that's just as much as you are. And being you is not a drowning situation. It's one of those places where you can sink and still be safe. And I was safe in my body, and I felt safe for the first time in my entire life. And I learned that I'm going to be okay. And it was very, very, very liberating to know what was wrong with me. Because when I left the doctor's office, I was crying so much. And I was crying because I had finally found out what was wrong. Not even because I was sad that I had this issue. And I've learned to deal with it. And now I have creative writing classes that tackles relief and trauma. And I meet people who also want that same kind of help. And we do these amazing things together. And now I get into the shower and I take a shower. And I can put soap on my head. And I wash my hair. And sometimes I still get soap in my eyes. But at least now, I don't think I'm going blind. And at least now, I can breathe through it, and I can let myself have this moment of fear. But at least I know I'm walking past it, and that no matter how much soap is in your eyes, you're gonna be okay, because it's always gonna be okay. Thank you.